Namandaps, 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 namandaps. Namandaps, 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 namandaps. Ngangon chou sengan ishim jodo shingan fu manzok sei fu jo shongak nga o無量光不意大世衆不在小貧具政府上昇が史上仏道妙正長実法空虚未所門政府上昇学利欲人少年上映す凡行シグム浄土 一生天人師、人力現代公、不正無才道、少女三苦名、交際主役難、回避地延言、滅死根門案、閉塞小悪道、通達全宗門、高僧上満足、いよろじぽ、日願主樹期、天候不言、一種解放像、公正功徳法、上大集中、説法施食、供養一切物、具足種特法、元年心上満、得意三害用、女分無下地、通達に不詳、願学営力、都市最小村、心安や国家、大戦の感動、国書天人、道内妙見。ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、ナマンダブ、何にしく毒、平等性祭、道本菩大心、往上安楽。Namandaps, namandaps, 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 namandaps. Please join me in Gasho. For 20 years, they had no children, but one night Queen Maya had a strange dream in which she saw a white elephant entering into her womb through the right side of her chest, and she became pregnant. The king and the people looked forward with anticipation to the birth of a royal child. According to their custom, the queen returned to her parents' home for the birth, and on her way, in the beautiful spring sunshine, she took a rest in the Lumbini garden. All about her were ashoka blossoms. In delight, she reached her right arm out to pluck a branch, and as she did so, a prince was born. All expressed their heartfelt delight with the glory of the queen and her princely child. Heaven and earth rejoiced. This memorable day was the 8th day of April. The joy of the king was extreme, and he named the child Siddhartha, which means every wish fulfilled. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Namandats, 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 namandats. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to a wonderful, wonderful Hanamatsuri service. I would first like to take this opportunity to thank all of the wonderful BWA women, every one of the members who played a key part in getting the flowers here, the beautiful daffodils, and set up this beautiful hanamido. I'll definitely post some pictures while I'm talking here of the hanamido because it's really beautiful to look at. And it brings up wonderful memories for me too, during my childhood, because I remember going to the Sacramento Betsuin and also pouring the tea on the tiny baby Buddha. So all of these wonderful feelings of natsukashi, right, or nostalgia are coming through me right now. And you know, one of the things that I just have to say is that despite the pandemic, despite all of the temples still being closed and not being able to gather in person, I have seen beautiful and wonderful hanamido all from around the BCA, right, on my Facebook page, and including here as well at the Tacoma Buddhist Temple. And despite the pandemic happening, despite not being able to gather in person, people have still been able to take their time and take time out of their precious day to come and build this beautiful hanamido so we have a beautiful shrine for this Hanamatsuri service. It really, in my personal opinion, reflects that the Dharma and the lessons of Shakyamuni Buddha still speak to us during these times, and that even a pandemic, despite physical restrictions, not being able to gather and not being able to enter into all the places we'd like to, right, we still do not stop listening to the Dharma. We still do not stop relying upon the great teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. We do not stop listening to the Dharma, and we still do not stop relying on ourselves, relying on each other as a Sangha. So I would like to thank all of the members for gathering today, or yesterday, and gathering all the flowers, bringing them here, and just decorating them this beautiful onaijin, or this beautiful hanamido. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Hanamatsuri, right? This is the day everyone knows in most Japanese temples that we celebrate the birth of Shakyamuni Buddha. And I'm certain that most of the Dharma school students, and I'm hopefully the parents, remember the story of how Prince Siddhartha, or who later would become the Gautama Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, right? I'm certain many of you remember that story, right? And that I actually read a little bit of that story from the Teaching of Buddha, which is pretty much readily available at any temple. And, you know, sometimes I think as a modern day civilization, we sometimes get caught up on certain aspects about these stories, right? Even with the larger sutra, we get caught up on certain aspects about these stories. And in the days of modern science and modern medicine, right, which of course I even myself heavily rely upon, right? But for those of us who are religious and who come to temple services and listen to these wonderful stories and about Prince Siddhartha's birth, right? There's other aspects to the story as well. Remember, after Siddhartha was born from Queen Maya's right side, the Buddha took 7 steps, right? And then in those 7 steps, flowers bloomed at every, on every step that he took. And then he pointed to the earth and the sky, and then he said, "I alone am the exalted one, or am the most honored one," right? And so, wow, if a baby did that in today's age, right? If a baby did that in today's world, we probably would be like, okay, we need to call the government, or we need to call these scientists to figure out what the heck is going on, right? And so one of the things that we sometimes do, I think, in modern society that I would kind of discourage, but again, I think it's fun to go into these historical documentaries and like National Geographic, is we always ask this question: okay, did this really happen? Did Shakyamuni Buddha really do this? What did Prince Siddhartha really do this, right? And the same thing with the 3 Pure Land Sutras. Did the Buddha really say the 3 Pure Land Sutras? Did he really say that? And does the Pure Land really exist, or is it just this made-up place that makes a nice story? Some people like to sort of qualify everything, or in a sense subjugate everything, right? Oh, the Pure Land is not really a place. It's just this nice way of saying nirvana, right? It's the Pure Land is here and now. I don't particularly subscribe to this one. Oh, the Buddha's birth. Of course, that didn't really happen the way that it's narrated. And for anyone who thinks that this did really happen in real life or anything, they're kind of still primitive and yada yada yada, right? I think we get caught up in these questions of realistic or realism, or what really happened, historical fact, all of this, right? But I think, again, we should not get focused on these aspects, okay? Because as many of you remember, and I don't know if Uncle Dean ever said it here at Tacoma Buddhist Temple, but my uncle, Reverend Dean Koyama, said something in the past that has always stuck with me, and that is, when we talk about these sutras, and when we talk about these stories about the Buddha, right, even the Jataka tales, right, with all the previous lives of the Buddha, my Uncle Dean, Reverend Dean Koyama, always said, okay, the question is not whether or not these stories actually happened, right? The historical fact, right, is not what is important, okay? The importance is, what does this story mean, right? What does this mean? What is this story trying to communicate with us, right? And if we get caught up on a lot of these aspects of, okay, but does the Pure Land really exist, or did Siddhartha really get born this way, right? We lose sort of the understanding, right? And there's that whole proverb about the finger pointing to the moon, right? We're getting caught up on the finger or the hand pointing to the moon, right? We're not looking at the moon. And so with Uncle Dean, I want to take his advice and talk a little bit about what the story means. So obviously the central character here is Prince Siddhartha, right? Prince Siddhartha's birth. Prince Siddhartha had to come into this world, and whether or not the story is true, historically speaking, right? The important thing is that Siddhartha came to this world, right? Siddhartha was born into this world, and Siddhartha would later become the Buddha, right? There are these sequence of events that had to happen. Now, when we talk about people, when we talk about historical figures, and when we talk about these historical figures of prominence, of course there's going to be some embellishment. Of course there's going to be a little bit of revering, right? I mean, heck, when you go to our own government, to the Washington, D.C., right? There's the Washington Monument, this huge monolith that just sticks out of the ground. And then there's the huge Lincoln Memorial, right? There's this huge statue of Lincoln, sitting on his throne, or sitting on a throne. And so that is a bit of deifying too, is it not? My point is that when we tell these stories, when we have this beautiful Hanamido set up, what we're really doing is we are commemorating the birth of Prince Siddhartha. What we are really doing is we are showing joy and wonderful appreciation and happiness that Prince Siddhartha was born so that later Prince Siddhartha would become Shakyamuni Buddha, and that he would be able to give us the teachings of the three Pure Land Sutras, right? And so, to me, again, this is, an incredibly important day. Now, other Buddhist traditions celebrate the birth, the enlightenment, and the passing into parinirvana all at once, called Vesak. I believe that Japan is one of the only other places in the world right now that, and well, I guess in the United States, right, that celebrates Hanamatsuri, or the birth of the Buddha, on April 8th specifically. So we have this beautiful tradition of honoring the birth of Prince Siddhartha. And when we think about it, Prince Siddhartha is the whole reason behind our tradition in the first place, right? Shakyamuni Buddha, again, is the whole reason behind our tradition in the first place, right? We honor Shinran, right? Shinran is on our shrine. We honor Amida Buddha. We honor all the 7 patriarchs, right? But would we be aware of all of these people and Amida Buddha if it were not for Shakyamuni Buddha? Right? That is the important thing. That is why we honor. Okay, that is why we put flower offerings and fruit offerings. And it's important for, I think, young and old to remember that we shouldn't get caught up in the questions of, did it really happen or not? Did it historically happen or not? And I'm going to tell you now, I don't know, right? I don't know if it historically happened. I have faith that it did, right? I believe that it did. Because if it didn't, right, would the story actually be here now? But we're not going to get into that. The whole point is that Prince Siddhartha was born, and we are given this beautiful message of the Dharma. So with that in mind, I would once again like to thank all of us. I would like to thank all the BWA women for making this beautiful Hanamido. I would like to thank our president, Crystal Inch, for explaining the history behind the Hanamido. I would like to thank all the young Dharma School participants for bringing up the flowers and the fruits and offering tea to the Buddha, right? We are all, unfortunately, not able to gather this again this year to celebrate the beautiful Hanamatsuri service. But that does not mean that we can't celebrate in our own homes, that we can't watch this service on YouTube, right? And that doesn't mean that we stop listening to the Dharma. So with that in mind, I want to once again thank you all for coming and listening to this beautiful time and this beautiful service of Hanamatsuri that we do, right, in honor of Shakyamuni Buddha, who would later become Gautama Buddha. So with that in mind, please join me in Gassho and repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Nam Mandats, Nam Mandats, Nam Mandats, Nam Mandats.
Hi everyone, happy Hanamatsuri. I'd like to take this time to thank the BWA for carrying on the tradition of decorating our Hanamido. It is so pretty. I wish we could all be there in person to see it. Did you know that the BWA started in 1934 and back then was called the Fujinkai? Reverend Yukawa and Mrs. Yukawa did a little research to try to find the date when the BWA kind of just took charge of it. Well, we just assumed they did it from the beginning of time. They probably brought in flowers from their own gardens and also prepared the otoki, or the meal, after the Hanamatsuri service. You know, daffodils have been an iconic part of our Hanamido, and thank you to Janet Hirano, a longtime supporter of our temple, and relative of some of our members. She connected us with Roger Knutson of Knutson Farms in Puyallup and Sumner Valley. He has been donating the daffodils for over 12 plus years. He's a second generation farmer, and we really appreciate everything that he's done for our temple. Please support him as well online or at his farms in the valley. Another note that Reverend Yukawa wanted to make was that our Dharma School students have been always a core part of our Hanamatsuri service. They bring down the flowers and the fruit and do oshoko and put the tea, sweet tea, over the baby Buddha. We really thank the families for coming to the service today and participating and being a part of this tradition. Reverend Yukawa also reminded us that the girls used to dress in kimonos, which I had no idea. So while some traditions change, others stay the same. And thank you to the BWA for doing an amazing job. And we really appreciate the care that you took and coming down to the temple to put the Hanamido together. So thanks again, and we hope to see you soon.